Shalom, guys. We're living in interesting times, and there is an expectation for the Great Tribulation and all of this. Often we hear about the Mark of the Beast, but the adversary always has a counterfeit. So what is the adversary counterfeiting, and is there a Mark of Yah that occurs at the same time? I believe Scripture says yes, and I believe it tells us exactly what that mark is. Let's take a look. All right, guys, you'd have to be living under a rock not to eventually run into information about the Mark of the Beast. And we hear about these things all the time. Typically, it comes from Revelation chapter 13, where the second beast comes forward and institutes some draconian measures. And scriptures in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 says, "And he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to be given a mark on their right hand and on their forehead." Notice, it's on the right hand and it's on the forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. So the beast has a mark. What's interesting to note is that the book of Revelation tells us that the Most High also has a mark. And so we want to look at that, and then we're going to identify what it is. It says, "Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. Then out of the clouds, or out of the smoke, came locusts upon the earth, and power was given to them as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor anything green, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads." So there's a seal of God that's on their foreheads. Where did that come from, and what is it? So I think we can go back 2 chapters, if I remember correctly, to chapter 7. And chapter 7 begins, "And after this I saw 4 angels standing at the corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds, so that no wind would blow on the earth or on the sea or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. And he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth, 'Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our Elohim on their foreheads.'" This is a sign. It's on the foreheads. But it doesn't tell us exactly what that is. So do we have some clues in Scripture that will tell us what that is? Because I think we have some ideas for the mark of the beast, but who goes back and looks and tries to identify the Mark of Yah? Well, I'd like to share some verses with you that I believe help unravel this mystery. And ironically, a significant chunk. Well, we notice right here, it says that the number that were sealed on there were 144,000 from the tribes of the sons of Israel. And it gives us a breakdown and tells us the tribes and the numbers and that sort of thing. But there were many, many, many who, during this time frame, were belonged to the Lamb, but it looks like they wind up under the throne. These are the ones that are martyred during this time frame. So there's something about a seal that maybe prevents ones from being harmed, while others are allowed to or purified through the tribulation. This is interesting. I'm speculating a little bit right there, but I think it bears out once we see the totality of what I'm going to share. So let's go to Exodus chapter 13, and I want to show you something interesting. There are three things in Scripture, three different items in Scripture, very specifically, that we're told places a mark on our foreheads or on us or on our hands. Okay? So Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "Sanctify to me every firstborn, the first offspring of every womb. Remember this day when you went out from Mitzrayim, from the house of slavery, for by powerful hand Yahweh brought you out from this place." So this is instruction for Passover. Instruction for Passover. Verse 7, "Unleavened bread shall be eaten throughout the 7 days, and nothing leavened shall be seen among you, nor shall any leaven be seen among you in all your borders. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what Yahweh did for me when I came out of Mitzrayim." Now notice this next verse. This is very interesting. "And it shall serve as a sign to you on your hand and as a reminder on your forehead, that the Torah of Yahweh may be in your mouth. For with a powerful hand Yahweh brought you out of Mitzrayim," out of Egypt. So Passover is a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead. That is interesting. And it continues, "Therefore you shall keep this ordinance at its appointed time from year to year." And we're told multiple places in Scripture that Passover is in all your dwelling places throughout your generations forever. Okay? And I want to come back and address this just a little bit more. But let's look some more at another verse. You scroll on down, same chapter, Exodus 13, verse 16. "So it shall serve," and again, this is talking about Passover, "serve as a sign on your hand and as phylacteries or frontlets between your eyes on your forehead. For with a powerful hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim." So Passover is a sign. It's a sign on your head and a sign on your hand. Interesting. Now, we also know that that same terminology or that same language is used for the Torah as a whole, but this is very specific, that Passover serves as a sign. Now, there are many that would say, "Oh, well, Passover, we don't have to do that anymore." But if you recall, Yeshua, sitting at the Passover table, said to his Talmudim, said to his disciples, "Do this in remembrance of me." So he's making the point, when you do this, it points to me. He doesn't say, "Don't do this anymore. You won't do this in the future." He says, "Do it, but remember me when you do it," right? So there's a connection between the physical and the spiritual. But I want to take us to one more verse here, and I want to give us a little more. 1 Corinthians, it's actually going to be 1 Corinthians 5. 1 Corinthians 5, verses 7 and 8, okay? And Paul, speaking to the Corinthians, he says, "Clean out the old leaven so that you may be a new lump. Or just as you are in fact unleavened. For Messiah, our Passover, has been sacrificed." Okay? But he doesn't say, "So we don't have to do that anymore." He says, "Therefore, let us celebrate the feast." He doesn't say, "Don't do it anymore." He says, "Do it, but this is how you do it. Not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." So he's talking about some of the spiritual elements, but he's associating that with the physical celebration of Passover from year to year in all your dwelling places throughout your generations, right? Same thing Yeshua essentially said when he said, "When you do this, do it in remembrance of me." And Leviticus chapter 23, somewhere in the middle of that chapter, it says, "In all your dwelling places throughout your generations forever." Okay? So, interestingly, Passover puts a sign on your forehead and on your hand. Scripture's very specific. So Passover is one thing from the Most High that puts his seal on his people. Okay? There's another passage that also tells us about another item that puts a seal on his people. Let's go to Exodus chapter 31. In Exodus chapter 31, starting in verse 12, we are specifically told, Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "But as for you, speak to Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel, saying, You shall surely observe my Shabbats, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you." Shabbat is a sign between us, his people, and him. And it's a sign that he is the one that sanctifies us. Okay? Continues. "Therefore you're to observe the Shabbat, for it is holy to you, or set apart. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death." That's a very important thing to note right there, because there are a lot of people that go, "Oh, no, Sabbath's been done away with. We can do what we want. We can worship any day of the week. We can, he changed the day," which never happened in Scripture. Can't find it. Show me. It's not there, right? But it says, "Therefore, you are to observe the Shabbat, for it's holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh there is a Sabbath of complete rest, kadosh, set apart, holy to Yahweh. Whoever does any work on the Shabbat shall surely be put to death. So the sons of Israel shall observe the Shabbat, to celebrate the Shabbat throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant." Okay? It doesn't say throughout their generations until the cross, or until the one like unto Moses comes, or until I tell you otherwise. He doesn't. It never changes, okay? It's always the Shabbat remains the same. A lot of Christian denominations will make excuses for why it changed, but Scripture doesn't change. Right here it says, throughout their generations as a forever, perpetual, olam, I think is the word, covenant. And then it says again, "It is a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he ceased from labor and was refreshed." So we have Passover as a sign, we have Shabbat as a sign. But there's one more sign where he specifically says that he puts it on their foreheads, or on our foreheads. This one's kind of in an interesting place. If we go to Ezekiel chapter 9, and I don't know if this will take me to Ezra or it takes me to Ezekiel. Fantastic. We're in the right place. "Then he cried out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, Draw near, O executioners of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. Behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faced north, each with his shattering weapon in his hand. And among them was a certain man clothed in linen with a writing case on his loins, and they went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of Elohim of Israel went up from the cheruv on which it had been to the threshold of the temple. He called to the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the writing case. Yahweh said to him, Go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which are being committed in its midst. There are a lot of people out there that will tell you, oh, Jerusalem doesn't matter. Jerusalem's not important. Jerusalem is downtrodden or under the trod of the Gentiles or whatever. And they don't stop and tell you that what they're supposed to be doing, what you are supposed to be doing, what I am supposed to be doing, is sighing and mourning and groaning over the abominations committed in the city that still today, right now, bears his name. But doing so, being heavy-hearted, desiring the redemption and the return of the city to the king, or the king to the city, that puts a mark on our foreheads. That's one of the things where the Father says, this is one that I want to keep. This is one that's worthy of being saved in the midst of the destruction, just as they were saved at Passover, just as Shabbat keeps you from being put out of the people, okay, or being cut off. Continuing here, it says, But to the others he said in my hearing, Go through the city after him and strike. Do not have pity Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare, utterly slay old men, young men, maidens, children, women, but do not touch any man on whom is the mark, and you shall start from my sanctuary. So they started with the elders who were before the temple. He said to them, defile the temple. Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go out. Thus they went out and struck down in the city. And they were striking, and I was left. I fell on my face and I cried, saying, Alas, Adonai Yahweh, are you, or actually I think the passage says Yahweh, Yahweh. Alas, Yahweh, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel by pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? And then he said, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is very, very great. The land is filled with blood. The city is full of perversion. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, and Yahweh does not see. Listen, there are lots of people out there right now today that say, Yahweh has forsaken the land. That's not his place. That is dangerous territory to be in. I don't listen to people who talk like that about the land. It's his job to clean it up. It's his job to judge it. I'm not going there right now. The bottom line, though, is you need to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. You need to make Jerusalem the chief of all things, or your right hand loses its cunning. There goes your trigger finger, right? You look like this, right? But seriously, he continues here. He says, but as for me, my eye will have no pity, nor will I spare, but I will bring their conduct upon their heads. Then behold, the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the writing case, reported, saying, I have done just as you have commanded me. There's a time coming. There is a time coming when the Most High is going to have some angel, some being that stands in his court come through and place marks on the heads and on the hands of those that he will save. And the great tribulation will start, and I believe that those who bear his mark will be preserved in the midst of the disaster. And I believe Scripture bears this out. We see it in Revelation, we see examples, and he tells us particularly what puts a mark on head and hand. Passover, Shabbat, and weeping over or sighing over Jerusalem. We're not given a lot of other things. There's the broad generalities of placing the Torah. Deuteronomy chapter 4, it says it will be a mark on your head, or says bind it up as on your hand and on your forehead. So we can go there right quick, but it doesn't tell us Deuteronomy 6 verses 4 and following. Okay. 4 and following, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our Elohim, Yahweh is one. That's the Shema, right? You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with your heart and with your soul and with all your might. These words which I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be frontals on your forehead. Write them on your the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Now, this is where we bind the Torah on ourselves. We work it, we do it, we learn it, we walk it, we keep it, just like the Messiah did, right? But it doesn't say that he puts the sign on us. This is a sign that we place on us. Passover is a sign that he puts on us. Shabbat is a sign that he puts on us. And based on Ezekiel 9, being concerned for Jerusalem and for the city is a sign that he puts on us. He did then, I believe he does now. He's the same. He doesn't change. So I would like to put that out there for you. I'd like for you to ponder and consider that. You think about the mark of the beast. Well, what about the mark of Yah? Do you have it on you? Can you get it right now? right? Now's the time to be planning for Passover. Now's the time to be getting things right. Who knows? Every Passover, I look expectantly. Something interesting can or will happen one of these Passovers, because he works in cycles, he works in patterns, and Passover is the time. Passover was when Lot was rescued. Passover was when Israel was rescued. Passover, I believe, is when his people will be rescued and taken out, and judgment begins for everyone else. Now, I do want to add the caveat that he says he will take us into the wilderness. Ezekiel chapter, it's either 16 or 20, where it says he's going to take us into the wilderness of the nations, and he will deal with us. I believe that's Ezekiel chapter 20, and he's going to deal with us. So there is that to be aware of, but the more things you've got right now, the less there will be to deal with when you have to deal with him face to face. All right, guys, I want to put that out there, something to ponder. Have you got the mark of the Most High on you? Are you bearing the mark? Are you prepared? Are you obedient to what Scripture commands that never changed? Contrary to the papacy, Western Christianity, religiosity, even Jews in Judaism, whole bunch of tradition. What does Scripture say? That's your guide. Don't read anything else. Don't read anything into it or take anything out of it that's not there. Simply read what it says. All right, guys, for King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.